What does your job say about your political leaning? Well, it turns out that an organization known as Verdant Labs looked into this to figure out which field of work leans Democrat and which field of work leans Republican. The results aren't necessarily shocking. I think it's just going to confirm what we already knew. Although when you look at the staggering statistics, the numbers, you're a little shocked, right? So let's start off with the first graphic that shows you the difference between environmentalists and oil workers. That doesn't surprise me, but just look at that. With environmentalists, obviously the vast majority tend to lean Democrat, and with oil worker, Republican.
So there's a lot of blue-collar dudes on this list that lean heavily Republican. You know, much to their detriment, but they do. And it's in a lot of the fields that are like, oh yeah, you know, lumberjack, oil worker. Actually, Anna with the shirt today might be leaning Republican. But as you go down the list, there's a lot of logic in it. It said Republican next to me. Somebody just tweeted out that I look like an executive, so I guess we would both be Republicans under that list. Pediatrician is more Democrat. Urologist is more Republican. Now, most of the doctors on the list, plastic surgeon, exterminator, no, that wouldn't be a doctor, are Republicans. But pediatrician who deals with kids, perhaps more empathetic, Democrat.
Yeah,
right?
I'm noticing that the more artsy jobs, like the more creative jobs, tend to be Democratic.
Of course, sculptor, floral designer, yoga instructor. Come on, did you think the yoga instructors were leading Republican?
I love the top one there. Booksellers tend to be more Democrats. When it comes to pawnbrokers, you know, they're small business owners, I guess.
Yeah, and they're knuckle. I'm being super unfair to pawnbrokers. Anyway, Gardner, Democrat, but farmer, Republican.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
Okay, because if you're making a business, oh yeah, there's no small farmers left. They're all huge businesses.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Whereas the gardeners, they're tending to their garden, they probably care about, you know, the earth and stuff. So that, whereas the farmer these days is industrial and he's plowing, you know.
So
these are gross generalizations, but they're borne out by the huge numbers in one direction or another.
Let's talk about the farmers a little more for a second. I always find it really interesting to see that a lot of the blue-collar workers and a lot of the people who work in professions that are getting screwed over by major corporations tend to lean Republican. Because if you look at what's happening with farmers in America right now, a lot of them are getting completely screwed over by corporations, right? So they're making their businesses so difficult that a lot of these big farmers are going into debt. They're not making as much money as they used to. And it's because of a lack of regulations that ensures that the corporations don't take advantage of the farmers. And so a lot of this has to do with misinformation or lack of information, but it drives me crazy because a lot of people do vote based on social issues as opposed to the big picture things that really have an impact on their lives.
So I think it breaks down into two categories. I actually think part of it is logical. So doctors, they hate the lawyers because they get sued all the time and they got to pay huge, insurance for based on the lawsuits. So the lawyers give more money to the Democrats. The Republicans want to cut their taxes. Doctors, on average, are rich, right? Not obscenely rich, well, depending on your context, but they're more well-to-do. They're in a higher bracket, right? So it makes sense that they lean Republican, putting aside everything else, right? The oil worker, well, look, the Democrats are more likely to protect you. On the other hand, you're going to have a job as an oil worker if you were drilling everywhere in the Arctic Ocean. You allow. Although you would love Obama because he allows for drilling everywhere, right? But of course they don't know that. So those I get, and there's some logic to that. The others, and why I find this so fascinating, is just as you're alluding to, Anna, is culture-based. My culture is Republican, right? I'm a truck driver. Yes, Democrats could probably help me with wages. My union leans Democrat, and my union has given me a lot of the protections that I have. Democrats would be more in favor of giving me protections. All these reasonable, I'm not overly wealthy, yada, yada, all these logical reasons why you might support the Democratic Party. But no, my culture is Republican because I'm a tough guy. Tough guys are Republicans and we believe in wars. And, we're going to get them, man. We're going to get Saddam. He did 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, I'm a progressive. I'm being slightly unfair in that you might have reasonable reasons to be a Republican. Okay, if you're a truck driver, again, look, if you're an executive, that's on the list. Well, you're in a really high bracket.
Yeah.
The Republican Party can do 1,000 things wrong, but I get that you want to keep your money, right? I don't agree with it. I think you should be better than that. You should understand that you give opportunity to people who could then be executives later, right, and get an education, et cetera. But at least I understand your motivation. But I'm afraid for the cultural guys, they got it all wrong, and they got taught something, and they feel like they're going to be more of a tough guy if they're a Republican,
yes.
or they're more Christian if they're a Republican. But you got sold a bill of goods.
Absolutely. Now, I want to point out one other thing. I thought it was interesting that talk show hosts tend to lean Republican. Now, it's nearly 50-50 if you look at that graph, but it does go to show you that for all the people on Fox News that claim that the media has a liberal bias, they're absolutely wrong. There are far more conservative talk show hosts than liberal talk show hosts. And so whatever they're saying, don't believe it.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I wasn't surprised by that number because you think Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, all these guys, everybody on the radio, almost everybody on the radio is conservative, and they're all talk show hosts, right? So, but you make a great point, right? So, liberal media. Well, there's proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Clearly not liberal. And those are the ones that matter because those are the ones that drive the news, drive opinion,
Exactly.
and affect policy more than anyone else.